Welcome back to the Bitcoin Reformation Podcast, where we are two again this week, but we are really close. I don't know. It feels like we are on the verge of sneaking Ben into the room, or like if he was here in person, pulling him away from whatever he was doing to say, hey, come over here and let's talk just for a little bit. So maybe next time we'll get him to be here. I don't know, David. In some ways, I think he's starting to miss our conversations enough that he's saying, I'm so busy that I can't do this, but I really want to, and so maybe I'll make it work. And we would love to have him back whenever he does. But just us two today. We've got an interesting, we're going to talk technical terms things, but hopefully in a way that is easy to not just understand, but see why on earth you should care about something called the hurdle rate. So we'll talk more about that in just a second. By means of family updates, things like that, we're doing really well. I mean, Judah is almost a year old, and the beginning of next month was just bonkers. He started sleeping through the night, which feels like a pure gift from God Almighty. I just told Emily last night, because every night before we go to sleep, I usually roll over and I pray, and that's just our habit. And it's been since he's been born that I've been praying, God, give us a good night of sleep. And so now, 11 months later, God has finally heard my prayer and answered it, and we have been getting great sleep. So for someone who has high sleep needs like me and is just a little wimp and complains endlessly when I don't get sleep, I am so overjoyed to sleep all night long, wake up ready to go. It's just, it literally changed everything. So that's huge. We're at the end of the school year here, so it's a mad dash to the end. Busy times, trying to figure out staffing for the next year, all those sort of things. But we're excited. We got a few things on the horizon. We're going to be going to Zion National Park. I told David that offline here, staying somewhere close to the park. So excited for that. The kids get to see, the beautiful world that God has made. And then way in the future, which even though I know it's not really close, but October, hopefully going to go see my brother and his wife with their newborn in October after they are born. So just, it seems like we're sitting in this place where we've gathered ourselves enough to not have to be so overwhelmed with the problems of right now that we can actually kind of look out into the future a little bit. And it's something to kind of enjoy, I think, and soak up. We had a dance party as a family a couple nights ago, listening to the soundtrack from David. And there is nothing better, at least at this stage of my life, of hearing my almost 5 and almost 3-year-old kids singing songs about following the light of Jesus and just with all of their heart. There is nothing better in seeing them catch that sort of stuff and regurgitate it. So I don't know if I share this or not, and then I'll stop talking. Silas takes the worship bulletins from church and he brings them home and he calls them his sermon. And so he says, Daddy, here's my sermon. And then whenever he loses it, he says, Daddy, where's my sermon? I need my sermon. And then he'll tell me his sermon. Oh, what's your sermon? I'm ready to hear it, Silas. And he has this weird prayer right now where whenever you ask him to pray, he says something like, God is in the grass. God runs around in the grass. Amen. That's like his little prayer. So just those little things, it's the stage of life, but they catch so many things that in some ways you are terrified of the bad things they could catch from you, but it brings you the joy when they catch the right things, so to say. So, David, what's going on in your neck of the woods, your mountain town, all those sort of things?
Yeah. A week ago, 8 days ago, I drove out to Phoenix, left 4 a.m., picked up a kid out of school at around 10 a.m., and we were back by 4 or 5. It was really helpful that Levi could help drive home and let me have a nap for
That's a long drive.
Or two. It was, but leaving at 4 a.m. allows me to miss the Phoenix traffic. I don't know a lot about Phoenix, but I know that after about 12:31 in the afternoon, You just don't want to get caught going east-west in Phoenix. So, yeah, I think that'll be our new rhythm maybe in picking them up. That worked. And then by Friday, we were all headed down to Irvine, California, where Saturday our oldest, Jed, graduated from university. And so that was really phenomenal. It was great. A great day. And now he's off with a service trip out of the same university this week up in the Sierra Nevadas. Should be home to us by Friday or Saturday. We'll see. And we're kind of waiting to see a few things, what's next for him. Either he'll be immediately trying to secure a job here locally and put down roots, but he might be headed back to Michigan to work a summer at a camp there that we love. And we're kind of honestly hoping it's the second. That we went as a family many times, but to go back and give back, would be great. We know the executive director there very well. It would just be, I think, phenomenal. So we'll find out, though. All will be good. I'm trying to think what else. We've had snowflakes off and on here.
Really?
Yeah, they say snow all the way through Mother's Day is possible.
Wow.
Nothing's accumulated now for more than a month. We've had a few clouds that have brought some snowflakes. Our famous eagles, bald eagles, are growing here in Big Bear. If you're not watching those with your kids, maybe you should, Jared. There's a live cam for the Big Bear bald eagles. I should send that to you, and then if we can get you and the family up sometime, that'll be a point of attraction for your kids.
Absolutely.
Of course, they might cry then if they don't see them or something like that. But, no, all's well. We have tickets now this summer. We're digging in deep and doing a trip like we've never done before, and going to Italy, briefly Austria, and a couple days in southern Germany. So we now, at the beginning of that, we have tickets for both the Colosseum and the Vatican.
Ooh.
I'm not I never thought I'd go to the Vatican, but I guess we're going to see the Vatican once.
Sure. I mean, they say it's beautiful.
Yeah. They say it's beautiful. The Roman Catholic theology hurts my heart. So sure. There you go. Council of Trent and their dealing of Ephesians 2-10 just hurts my heart. So, so that's what we're headed to do. Although I have Roman Catholic family members and great friends. So I should say that too, in case any of them are listening. So we're going to the Vatican. I'm trying to think. No, that's just it. But the weather is getting nice. We're getting in miles. Last Friday, Jared knows this. Last Friday, I took some time off work, and in the morning, I hiked and trail ran a 14-mile section of the Pacific Crest Trail. And that was just a blast because I got to it slowed me down running into and talking to a whole bunch of PCTers. But a guy from Louisiana via Colorado, a couple from Saxony, Germany,
wow.
A couple from Montana, a father-daughter from Montana, and a couple from LA. I think there might have been a few more. It's fun. It's part of the fun of our PCT Mountaineers in the springtime, meeting a few of them. Typically, I give them, pick up somebody who's looking for a ride in town, and you can tell them by their packs and everything, and that can be a lot of fun. I just haven't crossed paths. My timing's not been good. I don't run in and out of town a lot, so I haven't seen them, but it was fun to get that trail time. And that's about it. Okay. So here we are. I'm glad your family's doing well, Jared. So glad. I can't believe it's almost a year for your son. Yeah, that's great. And sleeping. Oh, I was laughing during that, by the way, because here you are nice enough to hang out with me and Ben when Ben's with us, two guys probably close to 20 years older than you. And while you're finally getting sleep, I'm a 48-year-old dude who can't sleep through the night.
That's awesome.
Like, I wake up. My sleep is not as good as it once was. I'm trying to figure that out, but I don't know. Do we have any listeners my age or older? Maybe it's a lost cause. My wife sleeps like a baby, though. So,
yeah, it's a wild thing. Like, just even last night, like, we both woke up in the morning. We're like, I don't even think I got up to go to the bathroom. Like, it's like 5 o'clock. Like, where did the night go? I mean, usually I'm like the 1:30, whatever, wake up sort of thing. But it's just like, when that happens, I wake up and say, wow, did I like time travel like through the night into the morning?
Right. Well, here we are. Okay, we've got some time. We're about 10 minutes in, and we've got about a half an hour of record time left. So this idea of hurdle rate. First of all, I did track and field in grade school. Nice. I don't remember what I ran, but I remember not loving the hurdles. Just they I don't know if they scared me or what. I just wasn't great at them. I was a pole vaulter in seventh
Really?
grade, which was probably like a 8 foot pole, and I probably felt like I was flying.
Oh yeah, sure.
And barely got off the ground. I don't think there was any flex in that pole either at 8 feet long or 10 feet or whatever. Nothing like the Olympics. But in my mind, I looked really, really good.
Oh, I'm sure you looked
pole
really
vaulting.
cool.
Yeah, so we've got this idea of hurdles. I've seen it now recently. We went to a couple of high school track and field events here on the mountain this year. And it is impressive seeing somebody fly over a hurdle when it goes well. But this idea of a hurdle rate says that things are happening with numbers, and particularly in the financial world, where if you're going to keep up, you got to at least meet the height of the hurdle and hopefully go higher over the hurdle. And what does that mean? The first one, which has been part of plenty of our conversations, is just inflation itself. So what in the world is the rate of inflation? It's a fair question, and it's a moving target. People try and quantify inflation. They do it on a basket of goods. That basket is changing year to year. Honestly, that basket's changing president to president. A lot of the shenanigans with this basket that they've been tracking for more than, I think, around 50 years or more has been that president to president, if they're tracking it, inflation's looking too high. There's political internal pressures and movements such that they change the basket and make the numbers, therefore, that they're measuring more favorable towards whoever's in office and wants to get in office or has midterms coming, this type of thing. So they've changed the basket over time. For instance, I don't think the basket now, if I remember correctly, Jared, I'm pretty sure the basket now doesn't include housing and energy costs.
Right.
Well, my goodness. I don't know. How much does gas cost there in Vegas, Jared?
It depends where you go. So like if you go to Costco right now, it's like $4.40, $4.50.
There you go.
But
we're
everywhere else
$5.30
it's like
Costco.
it's like $5.50 at, regular places.
Yeah, we're $5.90 to $5.99 at regular gas stations. So I'm trying to drive less, and so you can't tell me that is so meaningless as to keep outside of the basket. In fact, you would say if you're trying to track inflation for regular guys, regular families, regular working class people, and you're not tracking that, something disingenuous has happened over time. But nevertheless, they track that. We do talk about inflation rates. The Fed's long-term rate. And nobody exactly knows where this comes from. I heard a program on this recently, but their long-term rate is to have inflation be around 2% per year. And they say, why 2%? And they say, that's healthy. Well, why is that healthy? Because it is. It's just one of these sort of accepted things without really great explanation, but it's a target. And when they go over 2%, they try and bring it back down. I think we can easily argue that since COVID, it's been considerably more than 2%. So you've got inflation going on. So if inflation's happening and yet your salary has not grown year on year at the same rate of inflation, if you prior to then you were clearing the hurdles by a lot, which is to say money in, money out, just taking care of day-to-day business, pretty soon you're not clearing them as easily. You're right at the level of the hurdle, and you might even be clipping a hurdle. Or finally, you're just not clearing the hurdle at all. And maybe we've all seen video of that before. Somebody who gets tangled up in a hurdle, they go to ground quickly, they come up with raspberries on elbows and knees and hips. It's just not pretty. So the idea of a hurdle rate is something out there is growing, and can you clear it? If inflation is growing, which is to say the cost of living is growing at X rate, are your dollars in life, particularly your paycheck, keeping up with that, or even somehow increasing such that you can clear that? So I think that's the simple idea of the hurdle rate, but I'll stop there and let you fix or add or amend anything I've said, Jared.
I'm not going to fix anything, David. That was great. I think the thing I love the analogy of the actual talking about a hurdle, because I think that's a very helpful visual for people, and it sort of describes the goal, if you will, of what talking about a hurdle rate is, because it's not just trying to run on a track, right? Run your lap, right? You're not just trying to keep up, just stay in the race, but you actually have to jump over things, right? And so it implies a sort of extra effort is needed, or a particular gauge, if you will, even. So if you're running a normal race, you're kind of just going off of speed, off of the people around you. You're trying to run as fast as you can. But when you're hurdling, especially for the shorter hurdles like the 110s, it's included on the 300s and the 400 hurdles too, but especially on the 110s, you have to really have focused form and focused skills, if you will, to do that. And so much so that professional hurdlers know exactly, and even high schoolers too probably, know exactly how many steps they're supposed to take in between each hurdle. And so that then they know, okay, 1, 2, 3, jump, 1, 2, 3, jump. Like that's the rhythm they're in. And so it implies like a very focused effort. And I think that's the distinction between how people usually think and operate and maybe how we're saying they should think about things, being that it's not as easy anymore to just do life, to just make money, put some into your IRA, your 401k, whatever it is, and go. Because I don't want to steal your thunder, where we're going, though, is that the hurdle rate is not just changing, but is getting higher, I would say. And so you talked about goods inflation, but something we always talk about here too is monetary inflation. And so in some ways, there's even multiple hurdles to try and run over or to get over that are closely spaced together and at different heights. And so you could think about not just how much is the goods you're buying costing, but as we talk about, it's how many dollars are in the actual system, and how does then that also lead to those changes in the goods that you're having. Because as you make income, as you take out loans, all those sort of things, there are ways in which new money is being created. And we don't want to go too far down that road, I don't think. Basically, all that to say that there are even different types of hurdles that you have to create, different types of hurdles you have to get over, that you have to sort of measure yourself against. And that if you don't do that, well, like you said, you're going to run into a hurdle. You're probably going to fall down. Maybe not right away, but when it comes time to, I don't know, in my case, maybe someday buy a house. When it comes time to look at retirement, you're going to say, "Oh, what? This is not what I thought, not what I expected." So that's the only thing I'd add.
Yeah, I love it. And the way you talked about it so intimately. Did you used to?
Yeah, so I was. Yeah, so I ran. I was never. I'll say it this way:
we have a genuine hurdler.
I was never very athletic in high school. I was a 3-sport athlete in a small town, which I joked with my congregation a couple of weeks ago in a sermon, which basically just meant I was good enough to make the team and then sit on the bench the entire time. And so I did all of the events in track at least once. And so I didn't do except pole vault. I didn't do pole vault or high jump because that requires some actual ability. But I did all the other things once. And my things that I were decent at was the 300 hurdles and the 400, the mid-range sprints. So the 300 hurdles in high school don't require as much technique because they're shorter. And so you can really, it's beneficial. If you're going to be good, you need to have it. But by and large, it's kind of sprint, jump. And if you look like a fool jumping over the hurdle, as long as you're fast enough and you make up whatever time you lose on the technique in between, you're okay. But you just can't do that on the 110 hurdles. They're up to your hip or so.
Yeah, I've seen those, right?
Yeah,
right.
And you just can't. You can't jump over them. And they're for me, they were just scary. They were tall, and if you hit one, there's no gracefully falling. You're going to fall, and you're going to look silly, and it's going to feel awful. All those sort of things. So, yes, personal experience as a hurdler, I was never very good, but it is a very unique thing to say, hey, for an athletic feat, I'm going to put things in front of me and jump over them and run as fast as I can.
Yep. Well, okay. So we've defined hurdle rate a little bit. Now I want to see it as like addressing it or looking at it as two sides of the same coin, which is to say cost. Why do costs go up? And I think you've mentioned it in part. We'll talk about that. And then say, okay, well, if things are costing more, how does one go about saving in a world where that's taking place? And they both fit well together. So cost wise, I ran the numbers on our home here in Big Bear. We bought it 5.5 years ago, coming on 6. It's closer to 6. And based on our purchase price versus what Zillow tells me it is worth now, and it was higher for a time, so it's retracted a bit, but it suggests that the value of our home has grown 6% year on year. Okay. Which is amazing. So, and now I've got a kid graduated from college, wanting to build a life. Of course, you don't do that all at once. You don't have a Pottery Barn life right out the gate, sort of a catalog life. But, parts of that are just housing. You can be a renter, but part of the American dream, I think, is still to home ownership. I know you and Ben are both renting, but I've heard both of you talk about your longer term plans. Is you're renting for now with the hope of one day being able to buy, and of course that could change. But with our son, we'll just pick on my son Jed though. If he's going to actually meaningfully save up a down payment, which is sort of on the spend side, he needs to first pay attention to what's happening with the cost. And if the cost of housing, marginally is going up 6% a year, that first of all, it stands well against him. The cost of things driving up. If the cost is going up 6% or more year on year, who does that benefit? That benefits people who already own the stuff. That benefits largely baby boomer class who has owned homes. A lot of them paid free and clear. If you own other assets, that's good for you. But if you're on the front end where you don't have that asset, you don't have that item, and you need it, it stands against you. So the cost is going up 6%. Why is the cost going up? I think you've already addressed that. It's because of our money printing. Pure and simple. There's a lot of ins and outs of that. There's a lot of machinations, but it's put simply when it's put like this. When you have more dollars today chasing the same number of goods there were yesterday, then those same goods today will cost more. They will cost more. We've been watching Survivor season 50 with son number 3, which is hilarious. We haven't watched it in a long time, but when we were newlyweds back in the early thousands, we used to watch it and be into it. And he sort of thought it was this old thing. Well, he is hooked in it now. Well, they had one of the things recently where they set them down and they have items up for sale under a basket. You don't even know what it is, right? And they've given each of the contestants so much money, I think like $500 a piece. And, and they don't know how many items there are. They don't know how long the sale's going to go. But imagine that they know exactly how many items there are. And yet they doubled the amount of dollars each one's had to spend, from $500 to $1,000 each. Well, that's a closed system that just doubled in the amount of currency. And chances are what you're going to see then, if you could run that two scenarios, is people pay twice as much for an item. But here's the problem. Nobody just hands you and me typically twice the money that we have. We have to earn more over a lifetime. We have to take on a second job. We have to maybe secure a new job that pays more. We have to maybe talk to our boss, talk to the head shed about a raise, these types of things. Nobody just simply hands it. But in the meantime, the amount of dollars in circulation is increasing all the time through sort of natural machinations, which is the banks making loans. I mean, every time the bank makes a home loan, those are new dollars that didn't exist prior, which blows my mind, this fractional reserve banking. But then we've also got the Fed itself, which at times buys treasuries from the Treasury. This kind of sleight of hand whereby we've got these different organizations. Are they really that different? And the U.S. government buys its own debt so as to supply its own self with more dollars to spend. So it takes in $4 trillion in tax receipts, but it spends every year 6 to 6.5 to 7. Those dollars have to come from somewhere, and they come from this sleight of hand between the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury. But when that happens, when $3 trillion new dollars come onto the market, they're not handed out evenly to Jared and family and David and Ben and family. They don't come to us. They go to other places first. Although I take that back. There was stimulus dollars. There were stimulus dollars, weren't there, in 2020?
COVID. That's right.
And there's talk of more. But even then, I think we got something like $2,000 in COVID, right? When if you were to take all of the stimulus money that came out and evenly distribute it across U.S. citizens, it was something like $80,000 is what we all should have gotten. But it went to government spend programs. It went to those closest to the spigot. So the prices keep going up. Why? Because our monetary supply is elastic. It is elastic. It expands. Every once in a while, it contracts. If we were to pull up that chart, you'd see that the contractions are always playthings compared to the actual expansions. The contractions are momentary. The expansions now get bigger and longer and, quite frankly, steeper, taller. And the contractions are shallow and momentary. And when this happens, naturally then, when more dollars are out there chasing roughly the same number of goods, the cost of those goods are going to go up. So in the first case, why have we gone, Jared, from a nice track event where we had low hurdles to where the hurdles keep getting taller? And as you pointed out, they get taller, it gets scarier, right? It gets scarier and harder. Why have they done so? Because, and I think we've banged this drum more than once, probably a dozen or more times on the show, it's because governments like our own, every once in a while, say, hey, we're having a tough moment. We're going to print more dollars. Just trust us, though. We're not going to do this often. We're not going to do this frequent. But ultimately, once they've exercised that mechanism once, it becomes something that they regularly go back to. And it helps the government. It helps particular select individuals, corporations, entities in the near term. But the long term, as that elasticity and that extra volume of money slowly sloshes out over, the whole of the population, it drives prices up on normal individuals like us. So that's why the hurdle's getting higher, is because of this money expansion. And that makes life more difficult because life is not a game. You might say you have to play the game. Life's a very serious thing. And life's getting tighter and more difficult to pay the bills, to get the gas, pay the energy costs. I could say both. Our energy costs here have gone up tremendously since we've moved here. We're soaking it up somehow, Jared, but it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter, So that's particularly our home electricity has gone up like 35-40%.
Wow.
In the last 5.5 years. And then, of course, gas prices, which go up and down, and right now are up. Those are things we have to account for, and something else has got to give because my paycheck has not changed, right? It has remained pretty darn constant. So the cost is going up and up and up because of fiat abuse, and I'm going to call it abuse. Do you have another word for it? Do you have a kinder word for it?
Mismanagement.
That's nice of you. That's nice of you.
Well, and so I think the next thing, we need to talk about is what do you do in this situation?
Yeah.
And so, I can't imagine a life where I would be okay. Jesus is alive and risen from the dead. So I'm okay regardless. But if I'm speaking about the financial world that I must inhabit in our current system, I can't imagine a world being okay with just holding dollars, right? So I can't imagine a world where you can just save 10% of your paycheck in your banking account or something like that, and then by the time in the next 5 years, I'm going to expect to do something with that. Like, I just hear that and say, yeah, good luck. Like, okay, sure. We've talked on here how our emergency fund is not in dollars because the same dollars that, 8 years ago, 9 years ago when we got married, 1 month's expenses were this. Now, sure, of course, I've moved and I have more children, so our expenses have gone up. But it's also the inflation is so much higher now in the goods that I need for those months of supply that I would have to keep adding to that emergency fund. but I've stored it in Bitcoin. And so now it has done that hurdle rate for me. It's cupped up, it's exceeded that sort of rate. And so it's done. So that's obviously where we're going to go, but you can't just hold on to those dollars. You have to do something with them. And there is like, I think you could draw like a little circle, Venn diagram type thing, and say attempts to jump over the hurdle rate, and then draw like a whole bunch of arrows that come out of it. And so some of them, are things like, well, we were watching, so the Vegas Golden Knights are in the playoffs, and sports here are at a great time to watch. So like 6:30 start time, it's done by 9:30, and I can go to bed at a decent time and still have watched the whole game and not, lose my precious sleep, all those sort of things. And so we were watching TV, and there was a Kalshi ad on. And so it was like Kalshi is a predictive markets platform.
Oh, right.
Right. And so you go on here, and there are different versions of the questions, but some of them are like, will this happen by this date? Yes or no? And then you can bet and say, well, I'm going to bet no. And then depending on what the different spread is between those, if the outcome is no, then you'll get either a bigger or smaller payout if you're correct. And so there's all sorts of other predictive markets is what they call them. But one of those outcomes, or one of those attempts to gain or overcome the hurdle rate, is, some people would call that gambling. I would somewhat call it that. And so is this idea of needing to take an extreme risk, right? Because if you get it right, sure, you get your money plus whatever else the spread was. But if you lose, guess what? You get nothing. You get zero, right? You're out completely. Right. And so there's this need of, or this feeling of, hey, I have to go, and a phrase we've used again is further out on the risk curve to get that hurdle rate, to beat that hurdle rate, to do that. I think another natural one, this was sort of in my life, at least pre-Bitcoin, that there was a while when I was thinking, I think I should like invest our emergency fund in like the stock market, hey, I got to put this into some sort of basket of a S&P 500 and then maybe something in bonds, because again, I realized it was not going to grow. Even in a high yield savings account at 3%, it wasn't enough. And so then maybe you have to go out onto, stocks and try and play that game too, use that language of game to try and beat that hurdle there. There's just so many, little things that come out of just trying to, you realize you're in this situation and you realize you need to do something. And then you really are looking around and thinking, well, what's the way for me to get a foothold? What's a way for me to try and, if you want to use the analogy of hurdling, try and like get a little springboard right before I hit the hurdle to like help me jump, or how can I put on some shoes that maybe have more cushion in them so then I can jump a little higher, a little easier. And we would say that there's some good options and some not so helpful options out there. So that's where I think we should go next, at least is there. But is there anything else you want to add about that, or take us in a different direction?
That's exactly right. I can encapsulate both of these things then in my son Jed. Let's say he wants to save for a home. He wants to save up to where he can get a 20% down payment on something. He's going to be, if he just saves up and puts it in checking and savings, which are set pretty much the same rate anymore. When I was a kid, there used to be like a full percentage point difference between the two, right? But if he puts it in like the bank in cash, he's not only needs to save up to the original 20% of an original home price, but year by year, his target that he's going to have to save up for in dollars is going to keep getting pushed out. If homes like my own here are growing in value at 5.5 to 6% per year on year, if that's the CAGR on homes, then sort of I'd call it the finish line, but really a 20% down on a home is the start line. The start line is getting pushed out.
It's just getting in the game.
Just getting in the game is getting harder and harder. So then you'd want for a kid like that to say, hey, inflation is X amount per year, 6%, on the homes at least. Wouldn't it be nice if we could find a vehicle that reliably got you at least 6%? Maybe 6%, and anything more than 6%, 6% you're keeping up, right? The dollars you save today then will grow at a rate, the same rate as the house. Well, that's nice. That's better than the alternative, right? But is there something safe and nice that you can grow in such that, maybe 5 years down the road, you've grown your pile that you've been saving at a faster rate than inflation has increased the cost of that home? That would be stellar. That would be stellar. And we've got a couple answers for that. There's a few things you can do. The U.S. bond market's at like 4 and 5%, and by the way, anything more than that is considered unhealthy. In fact, the bond rates have been going up and up, and why is that? Because there haven't been strong buyers, a strong pool of buyers for those bonds, and so without a strong pool of buyers, they tease people with a higher rate. But a higher rate's not good for the government. They're getting less of a return on the lent dollars to them, or they're giving more of it away. I guess you could say they have a higher rate to service them. So bonds don't keep up. S&P 500 roughly does. So it does, Jared. It does, or at least has in the last decade. Amazingly so. The question is, you'd want to ask yourself, what has premised that growth of the S&P 500? And there's people who've shown charts that show the S&P 500 really hasn't grown. It's just kept up with the same rate of that money supply increase that we talked about earlier. And specifically, they call it, I believe, the M2 money supply. There's different sort of layers of these dollars. But the S&P 500 has actually kept up with the natural rate. Is there anything you can still do to go further ahead? For us, I think, you and I both know, having saved in Bitcoin, each of us, longer than 4 and 5 years, there is no 4 or 5 year span in the Bitcoin cycle, all 17 years of it, where if you've saved at that length of time, where you're in the rears. Even if you've DCA'd all the way up to a high like last October when it hits 126K and then drops down to 60 recently, if you've saved over the course of 4+ years in Bitcoin, you are not in the rears. You have seen growth, but that's pretty darn volatile. I mean, listen to what I just said. Last October is 125. Maybe a family member gets in at a sizable position. I mean, can you imagine a family member? Let's say they get in for the full 125 for one Bitcoin. They're probably knocking at your door, and now there's heartburn between the two of you, and you're just like, calm down, stick with it. Well, that's hard if they've bought in at 125, and over the course of 6 months, their 125 became 60. They're probably not feeling very good about it, and so while Bitcoin, we would still say dip your toes in it. I would recommend that. Dip your toes in it. You'll have to figure out what that means. Not financial advice, but I'd have you dip your toes in it. Dip your toes in it, see what it's like, hold it long term. I've got a friend here locally. She started to do that recently herself. Well, we would encourage that. We do recognize that Bitcoin is volatile, and so what's really interesting, I think that's what's really interesting is, if you're going to talk about a hurdle rate of Bitcoin that's favorable, you have to be talking in a 4 or 5 year window of time. That's the only thing that accounts for that volatility over the course of time. But what would you do, Jared? What would you say to somebody who says, hey, is there something, I can't do my savings account. It's not growing. It's not keeping up with inflation. I'd prefer not to do the stock market. I see where it's only tracked with the money supply. Are there any vehicles out there that have a hurdle rate in terms of savings increase that's higher than inflation but less volatile than Bitcoin?
And you're throwing me a softball or
I am.
Pitch right down the middle, so to say. The thing that we would point to, and we've talked about it before, is strategies, preferred stock, STRC, or stretch. And at least currently, I think is it 11.5% right now?
Yes, I believe
so. Okay, right. Yeah. So the annual payout is 11.5% paid monthly. And basically what they're doing is they're taking that volatility, and they usually say, or they're working with an assumption of a 30%, right, Bitcoin compound annual growth rate. And so they're saying, hey, we'll give you 11.5% of that, and we'll take the other 19 or so and change, and we'll keep that for ourselves, and then we'll give you the rest of that as a dividend, as a return of capital, tax efficient, all those sort of things. And so the strategy, Michael Saylor's presentation at the Bitcoin conference this year was all about this. Actually, it was mostly all about STRC, and it's very different from other preferred stocks. So this is not like hey, I'm going to go buy Apple. It's a different sort of thing, and a different layering of debt, all those sort of things. But it's very different from other bigger companies that have preferred stocks. So you think of like JP Morgan, Chase, they have preferred stock. All these banks have preferred stocks. But MicroStrategy's Stretch is in an entirely different league of its own in the amount that is bought and sold, in the amount that is held. I mean, it's unbelievable as you hear him talk like, hey, this is a brand new, it's not really a brand new product, but it's being adopted and used in unbelievable ways compared to other things that are of a similar nature. And so what they're trying to do is address a market of people who say, I can't hold Bitcoin because it's too volatile, or maybe I don't have 5 years to hold on to it and wait. Like I need this capital to be able to go to Italy, to be able to pay something, in a couple of years or a year. And so they're saying, hey, we can give you something that's going to give you some of the benefits of Bitcoin, but largely keep your capital as is. But then because we're going to take that and buy Bitcoin with it, the funds, that then we're going to give you a cut of that because we know Bitcoin is going to go up about 30% every year. And so we're going to give you an 11.5% cut of that volatility. And so it's a way for you to get access to call it the upside of Bitcoin, or just call it the gain of Bitcoin, without necessarily having to hold it entirely yourself or buy an ETF and be exposed to all of that. So I don't feel like I hit very well.
I love it. So they say we're in it for the long term. We think you're going to get this product and stick with this product because it's going to be so good to you. You buy it at $100 a piece for Stretch, and it gives you back 11.5% year on year. You said it's paid out monthly. And by the way, there's a proposal that it'll be now bi-monthly starting midsummer, so twice per month. And there's reasons why that's beneficial to everybody involved. But they're like, you just get... You get the steady guarantee of 11.5%. Anything when the growth that you've allowed us to accumulate more Bitcoin. When the Bitcoin you've allowed us to accumulate by buying the Stretch goes well beyond 11.5%. As you said, that's ours. You don't get to share in that, but you get steady. You get expected steady. In fact, it's a fixed income product. This is a dream. So let me give you a real world scenario. I met with my mom and her financial advisor via Zoom a few months ago. She really loves him and trusts him. I will say this, on the whole, he's been very, very good to her. But last year was not a good year for her portfolio. It was not a good year. It earned, but it was in the single digits. All right? Earned single digits. It's kind of a classic 60-40. In her case, I think 70-30 split. It's not... her portfolio by this time in her life, in her mid-late 70s, is not looking for crazy growth, because if you're looking for crazy growth, you're living out risk year to year, right? You've got to kind of risk some to get some. She's more on the fixed income side, where they want kind of slow and steady, but they still want growth. But still, for all of that, earned single digits. And now I'm, Jared, looking at two things. First of all, her single-digit growth didn't keep up with inflation. Not good. And second of all, the investments that she had, which are meant to be safe, kind of slow, steady, fixed income, nothing too risky, nothing too wild, didn't keep up with what for me is now the new hurdle rate for savings, 11.5%, right? And by the way, to do that 11.5%, you'd have to be working with your brokerage, and that's not as easy as a bank account. So let's predict a possible, if not likely, scenario. And then we'll come around on this in a future show if it comes to be, is there's talk, people are asking the question, which is the first bank in the United States that's going to pay attention to stretch, which is 11.5%, and then bring it in-house, white glove it, and hand it to Jared and his wife, David and his wife, as an 8% savings account, right?
Yeah, 3% return is pretty good.
Yeah, so the bank gets 3.5% or something. I'm just picking 8%. It could be plus or minus, but 8% return sure beats my normal savings account right now, and gets the bank 3.5% of the same. I mean, that's pretty remarkable, and packages it right in my U.S. bank app where we already live. I've outed myself. I've doxed myself in terms of our local bank. Barely any dollars there, I promise you. But wouldn't that be amazing nevertheless? So strategy is saying, hey, the overall growth of Bitcoin long term, as you said, is like 30% year on year. We're willing to strip off some of that and hand it to you in stretch, which is a preferred stock. Bought in brokerages. What if a bank says, okay, we can deal with the purchasing of the stock in the background. We get to keep a few percentage points of the vehicle, and we'll pass it on to you as 8.5%. Suddenly, even my mom's local bank or credit union account could outperform at a steady rate what her financial advisor was able to do for her in 2025, right? Mm-hmm. So that would say to financial advisors, you also have a new hurdle rate. You also have a new expectation of minimum performance for your folks, you know. For me, it's a very promising thing. And it's a way where if we particularly have some listeners who are like, I listen every once in a while, or I listen regularly, but I still haven't gotten into Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin is going to, kind of trickle down, work its way down to more mainstream places, including your bank account. Within, I don't know what the timeline is, it still could be a couple of years. I do think there's great advantage to the first U.S. bank that offers this. I mean, imagine the national campaign.
They could call it we give you double the highest high yield, and they could offer like 6%, and then collect 5.5%, for themselves. I mean, they're crazy.
FDIC insured at that point, I believe, at the local bank level. Yeah.
It'd be nuts.
So anyways, the hurdle rate. First of all, you need to look at the world around you, and as prices go up, say, why are they going up? It would be good for all of us to gain an education in that. As by the way, Bitcoin, I would say, and I think you've said this in the past, and Ben has said this, Bitcoin is what gave me that education. Why Bitcoin? Precisely because of, to use your word, the mismanagement of monies across the world by nations who hold and print those monies. The mismanagement has led to inflation going up and up. But now we have something that just 10 or a dozen years ago was something held by very few. It was kind of for the nerds, the cypherpunks and the like. This Bitcoin, it wasn't worth much at the time, though they believed in it from first principles. Now it is in the process of monetizing, of growing in its value. Why is it growing in its value? We would say precisely because it is a fixed and immutable supply with a known supply issuance that is tapering off 50% every 4 years. It tapers off more and more and more. And because of that, it's sound money. And because of its soundness, it is growing at a CAGR that's greater than inflation, which hurts us. And now, not only Bitcoin itself does it do that if you're willing to hold it through its fluctuations, but now there are companies and organizations out there taking it and saying, hey, we can use Bitcoin to offer to citizens. It'll be at a smaller growth rate, but still clearing the hurdle rate of inflation itself, we can offer to them vehicles which truly help people in their daily lives. And so for all of that, I am encouraged. I am super hopeful. Josiah and I were listening to a Bitcoin podcast on our way to somewhere. I forget which one it is. I should go back and find it. I think it might have been Peter McCormick talking to somebody talking to Peter McCormick. Peter McCormick is a British broadcaster who started a podcast called What Bitcoin Did. He walked away from it a few years ago. He allowed his assistant to take up the show, Danny Knowles. Peter McCormick has since kind of started his own podcast in Great Britain. I would say it this way, and I mean this to be a compliment because I think he's pulling it off well, and I mean the analog to be a compliment as well. It's sort of to be the Joe Rogan of Great Britain. Not in all ways. Peter McCormick, I don't think, is into UFC as much or comedians as much as Joe Rogan seems to be. But he's kind of tapping into that same zeitgeist over there. Has some very serious conversations. But Peter McCormick comes back on Danny Knowles' podcast now. They're talking about cool. it. And he said, somebody said, as far as I know, the Bitcoin crowd is the only hopeful crowd out there. And this is amazing. Peter McCormick said, yeah, I think there's two. And somebody, the other person on the show, I think it was American Hodl, said, who? And Peter McCormick said, the Bitcoin crowd is hopeful, but Christians, I think they're also hopeful. And Peter McCormick is one of these guys who's like peering in on Christianity, doesn't consider himself to be, a Christian, I don't believe, or in the camp. But he's noticing something about this, and we would say the same. Our greatest hope is in Christ Jesus our Lord, given, crucified, resurrected, living, abiding, gifting. So if you ever want to talk, that's actually the primary conversation we would want to have with any of our listeners, most certainly. But in sort of a horizontal, day-to-day, caring for our neighbors, building in the world, the Bitcoin space is a very hopeful crowd, and I love what's happening in this moment, kind of framed as we have today, Jared, through the language of hurdle rate. First, the hurdles smack us because it's the cost of everything going up and up and up, and we're struggling to get over it. And now suddenly Bitcoin is offering, not only is it available itself, but new Bitcoin products, kind of downstream products, are being offered to more normal people, and I think are going to be accepted more and more and more. There's going to be somebody out there whose financial advisor told them about Stretch a little bit, didn't tell them any of the background, just said 11.5%, and bi-monthly, and they said, get me in that. And they'll be in Stretch, know it's Stretch, and won't know that it's Bitcoin on the backside powering it, and yet they're in it, and it offers them some measure of hope to not kind of go underwater or not be able to, hit that hurdle and, land face down on the track, all bloodied.
And I think the thing I would say too is not only is the Christian crowd hopeful, but we're hopeful because, using the analogy of the hurdle, Jesus has ran the race before us, and he has hurdled all of those things that cause us pain, difficulty, and suffering in this life, right? So we would use the words of, he has crossed and defeated the hurdle of sin. He has jumped over the hurdle of death itself, and even Satan too, and won. And so in many ways, I don't know if Jesus is the greatest hurdler of all time, but in our analogy, he is. And that's ultimately, in some ways, the reason that we're free. We're free to have these conversations. We're free to worry about the things of this world, in the sense of God does actually care about our day-to-day life. Yes, he's taking care of eternity too, but he's not just sitting there waiting for us to die. He's actually here, present, wanting to bless and give us what we need in our daily bread and all those sort of things. And so just one more thing about Jesus as a hurdler, to push our analogy as far as we possibly can.
I love it. We're called to run the race, but nothing's Our salvation's not on the line anymore. As you
Right.
use the word free, that's the organization I serve. Says now on account of Christ, you are forgiven and free. And part of that freedom is to certainly before God we are free, but we're also now free and freer in our daily vocations as we go about. We know of a God whose providential care covers us in the blood of Christ, but we're now free to care for our neighbors and not just cover our own backside. So enjoy this freedom that you have. That is all of yours in Christ Jesus your Lord. But also in the horizontal, that's I think kind of small f freedom. That's why we're excited about Bitcoin. Is I'm less dark when I think about the world for my son Jed, kind of entering into adulthood and the workplace. I see a way where he doesn't have to forever sort of be behind and underwater, but that he and his peers can be hopeful. And let's face it, there hasn't been a lot of that hope for each generation. There's probably less for yours than mine. I mean, I'm Gen X. We're rebels. We're on the coattails of the baby boomer population, and you just keep going down the line. And if a young person can't afford housing, we've even run into instances of this where we've heard people talk about this firsthand, unsolicited. If they can't afford housing, then they're saying, I'm probably not going to have children someday, and I'm probably not going to get married. You've got to be able to offer to each generation the ability to have the things that we have, such that we get to enjoy wife and children. I mean, I got to say that to you. I love my kids and I enjoy my kids, but Jared, one of my favorite times about being on here every 2 weeks with you is hearing the story of your little ones and kind of going back to those days.
Oh man. And it's in some ways it's helpful for me to remember that in all of the craziness and the disciplining of, no, you cannot spit in my face. No, you cannot, do all of these sort of things. There are lots of reasons to smile and laugh and just enjoy the time that God has given us now. So I appreciate the opportunity to share those things because it's helpful for me too. So
Awesome.
Great place to end today. Whether you've thought this was helpful or not, we'd love to hear from you. We should probably do a little bit better about responding to those emails that we've gotten. But we'd love to hear what you're thinking, how maybe we could have you on if there's something you want to talk about with us. That email should be in the description, below the video there. But we'll see you next time as we, again, talk about our love for Jesus and, yes, Bitcoin too. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.